Hello, hello, hello. I hope you guys are all ready to talk about the future of Game of Thrones TV. I know we sure are. So this panel, we're going to focus predominantly on the one currently, in production that they're filming the pilot for, known as The Long Night or Blood Moon. Those are not going to be the title, but that's what we will continue to refer to it as. And if we have some time, we might talk about other options for potential spin-off prequel shows. So why don't we go down the line and everyone introduce yourselves real quick? I'm Ashaya from History of Westeros podcast, so I'm very happy that all of these shows are prequels.
Yeah. I'm Luca from Watchers on the Wall.
I am David Rosenblatt, also from Watchers on the Wall.
I'm Dan from winteriscoming.net.
I am Quinn from the YouTube channel Ideas of Ice and Fire.
I'm Lisa Spinagle, and I am an actor, and I don't have a podcast.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask, all of you, what do you think makes Game of Thrones popular? What do you think that they'll be trying to recapture here in this show? Well, for example, I particularly like the characters, how they're gray with depth, and I expect that will obviously be the case.
I think that just from the cast that we already have,
yeah.
It's obviously going to be again like a very large ensemble cast. So I think we'll have like all kinds of characters again.
Mm-hmm.
I think at first they're going to try their best, sort of like season 1, which was on a lower budget, to be a slower character study set in the world of Game of Thrones and see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of their only option if they, well actually no. One of the cool things about the Blood Moon is that they're starting it at like a level that Game of Thrones didn't have to. The Game of Thrones started, not as a giant hit. It started out as kind of, it's a fantasy show about dragons on HBO, but it's serious. That's a little weird. And it built up slowly this long time. And now they actually can start with a bigger budget. So I certainly hope that they'll take it slow, because I mean, you have to build a slow audience. But
it's not that. It's not that we know for sure, but I think that they're going to have like a season 3 or 4 level.
Yeah, around that.
Yeah.
So like if they wanted to, they could probably go right to the spectacular theatrics. But I think if they know, what's good for them in the long run, they'll start slower. That's my hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we even get that. I mean, in the description, in the pitch for the show, they talk about how it chronicles the world's descent from the golden age of heroes into its darkest hour, which could, Age of Heroes, there could maybe be higher magic starting it off, but we could see, how that actually, like the magic that caused the White Walkers, the others, to be created.
Yeah, I think that the slightly confusing thing is that, at least according to legend, the Long Night took a long, it was long, so,
long time.
like a generation or two, right? So
Let's see if it's longer than
an actual night. Yeah.
I think use what you know. You already have a built-in audience, which Game of Thrones did on a far smaller level from book readers at the time. So use what you know. The audience already knows that there's magic in some way involved in this story, even if you've never listened to History of Westeros, even if you've never read a backstory to anything, there's magic. So I think they should start small and with people and go from there.
And I think it's encouraging. I mean, I think there are worrying signs and there are positive signs. I think it's a good sign that they have this big ensemble cast, that they're not going to kind of change the format and like have a star. I mean, I know that Naomi Watts is a name, but like not like The Rock, kind of like celebrity name.
Yeah, and George has specifically said she's not a lead, this is an ensemble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think is definitely the right option if they want to have a similar kind of scope, if they want to like it to match the breadth of experience that Game of Thrones offered, which is one of the best things about it.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot in the casting we've had, which has been, pretty varied.
Yeah,
and we'll get more into that when we talk about what the landscape is of Westeros currently, I mean, in this time period. But we can see that just in the casting that we're gonna see some different regions, not just Westeros.
Yeah.
Oh, well, or maybe I don't know. Maybe the racial makeup of Westeros wasn't as it is in the present.
Yes, that's very true.
We don't actually know. So.
We don't. Do you guys want to get into some of these actors we've got in here?
Sure.
Talk about some speculation about them?
Can we talk on this end too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I can't.
Well, I was going to say, like everyone else said, the characters are really important in how they interact with each other. But also, this is the age of heroes. So unlike Game of Thrones, this is a time from the get-go where there was more magic. Because when we're watching Game of Thrones, magic has died off. It started to die off, and now it's just now coming back. But during the Age of Heroes, during the Age of Legend, it's like already there, and I think that's important too if they want to be accurate to the canon.
Yeah, the thing that I'm interested in seeing, not only the development of the characters, but the development of the mythos. The earliest, this is prehistoric Game of Thrones, basically. So we've got this concept of possibly the development of the Lannisters, the ancient Starks, and direwolves and how important they were at that time.
Yeah, I am very excited about the line they have about the mysteries of the East. I'm very intrigued by that.
Yeah, that was a part of the pitch.
Yes, in the HBO press release.
Yeah, it was interesting because it's not necessarily what you would expect.
Yeah, I agree.
Quinn, you mentioned canon, right?
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is that the show, or at least HBO, has the opportunity, I guess, to make its own canon, which might make people obviously angry. But I think it's interesting, or it will be interesting to see which direction they go in, because, you know, similarly to the way Game of Thrones started with lower on the magic and then increasing it as it goes on. Yes, Age of Heroes obviously should have historically more magic, but I wonder if they choose to show that first or if they choose to dole it out later. I wonder.
I think they don't need to anymore. Like, people saw all of Game of Thrones, so
I agree.
I think I think someone said it, like they have a built-in audience of people who are already used to the magic, so maybe they can start just directly.
Yeah,
I think it will be there for sure. If you're a Magic fan, I'm sure it will be there.
I do wonder, because, and again, you brought up the magic. Game of Thrones, part of the reason it was so successful is because, as is kind of the cliche, it tricked people into non-fantasy fans and liking fantasy with sex and violence. If they start off the magic at a higher level, does anyone here think that might alienate some audience members, or are we ready for that now? As like Game of Thrones taught us.
I think maybe we're ready for that now. I think they've already built up this anticipation. The dragons, everyone loved the dragons
People
so much.
love dragons.
Oh, they love that. But, you know, now we're going to have mammoths, supposedly.
More mammoths.
And maybe spiders as big as hounds?
I'm looking forward to
Hopefully.
seeing some of the magical creatures that have been mentioned and seeing more of them, like the children of the forest and all of the ancient creatures that have died out. I think it'd be really cool.
I think some of the magic is, in many ways, at least for me, the wonder. So when Jon, I think it's the beginning of season 3, is on the other side of the wall and he looks up and he just sees the giants walking by, that for him is magical.
Yeah.
So I hope they can capture that without just throwing, that's my glasses, without just throwing tons of magic right off the bat.
I mean, you can do it subtly, I think. I mean, George R. R. Martin, even when the magic is at its height in the book, it's still very subtle. It seems very realized.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, I don't know, go all out immediately.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, in Game of Thrones itself, aside from the dragons, they actually don't go that high magic, especially when you
don't.
compare it to the books. They actually
Yes.
cut quite a lot of it out.
I do think that if they're going to do the Long Night, if they're going to do the Night King, or not the Night King, the White Walkers invade, if they don't have ice spiders as big as hounds, it's basically writer's malpractice. Like, I think we pretty much owed that at some point. Maybe not season 1, but ice spiders as big as hounds, it's going to happen.
We need them.
Yes.
Yes, they would. I would definitely be looking forward to those ice spiders.
Kieran Belshaw was here yesterday. Start concept artisting Kieran Belshaw for the Blood Moon.
Oh, and if, in case anybody doesn't know, this is a pilot right now. This is only a pilot. And it's filming right now, right?
Yeah,
in Northern Ireland?
We may never see this.
Yeah,
Luca, you have the dates, right?
yeah, I think so. In a few days, they're filming their last stuff for the pilot in Italy. It's the first time that they go to Italy, and they're only filming for a day in July 15th. And after that, it's going to be, actually
And if it-
editing and making the pilot, and then, I mean, it's going to be picked up, but obviously, but it hasn't officially happened.
And if it comes out, it would come out in 2021.
You think 2021? I mean, I think fall 2020. I don't think they want to lose the momentum.
I think they can make it
That's my guess.
to the end of 2020. Yeah.
We had someone else right there.
I had a question about the pilot thing, because this has perplexed me for a little bit, and I want to hear what you guys think. So, okay, Game of Thrones, biggest show in the world, huge success. They ordered Watchmen to series. They ordered J.J. Abrams' thing, Demi-Monde to series, whatever that is. They ordered The Nevers from Joss Whedon to series, so like a Victorian superhero lady thing. But they're making a pilot for the Game of Thrones prequel.
They don't want to have a swing and a miss.
I suppose.
They have to get it right. They can't.
I think,
yeah.
I think and probably it's going to be much more expensive than any of those other shows. So they're going to be sure that they have something special with the pilot, and then they can go to series.
It's not a cash grab, but it is their pocket of cash. It is their moneymaker. This is Game of Thrones, new show.
I think they
Which,
should
by the way, is going to be for sure, right? Like, it's not going to be whatever name. It's going to be Game of Thrones, something.
Oh, I hope not.
I think so. Yes, yes, for marketing purposes.
It probably, yeah.
It's probably going to.
I
be
mean,
that.
to be fair, like George specifically pointed out, there are 100 kingdoms. That's a lot of thrones fighting over.
Yeah, sure. But,
Yeah, no, I would not like that title.
No, I mean, I wouldn't, and nobody would end up calling it that. But
A Game of
like,
Thrones story, like how they do a Star Wars.
No.
It's just like, it sort of impressed me, just like, if it were any other network, I feel like we would already have a spinoff. Like, if AMC had Game of Thrones, do you know how many prequels we would already have?
For sure.
A bunch. So it is nice that the HBO's. I mean, it's the right call to make a pilot first. I'm just I didn't have confidence they would actually do that. I thought they would go right to series, and maybe they won't call it Game of Thrones Blood Moon 2. Maybe they'll just call it Blood Moon: The Long Night or something. We'll see about that.
We'll see.
They originally wanted to, when they were first starting these sequels or these prequels, they were going to had 4 or 5 in development.
Five.
And it fell down now to this one that's being shot. And George R. R. Martin just said 2 more in
But that was by
that are
design.
active,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whatever that means.
I believe Brian Cogman had been working on one and then dropped out.
Yeah.
Whichever one that was.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, they just have a lot of money, so they paid like 5 writers to do like their different pitches, and
I think they're doing a combination of both playing the long game and also playing the short games. Long game, get it right. Short game, retain your audience.
Pretty smart. Like, just more smart than I thought a network would be. So
They
good for
should
you.
take as much time as possible to get it right.
Agreed.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready to move on. Do you guys want to start with the actors or with setting the stage for what Westeros looks like around this time period? No? Okay, let's go with what Westeros looks like, I think.
Okay.
I'm excited to talk about that a little bit.
I'm sure you have a lot to say.
I have a bit to say, but I think you guys will have some input here. George has made a point to point out that Westeros is very different. Like I said, there's 100 kingdoms, but there's a lot of iconic places in Westeros that don't exist. Obviously, King's Landing and the Iron Throne. Weird to picture Westeros without that, right?
It's the
Wall,
nexus
no
of the
wall.
whole show.
And no Valeria?
We're going to see just the rise of Valyria, before their empire has started. So, they're taming dragons or creating dragons, perhaps.
Well, but we've been told at least that there won't be any dragons. So.
It would be interesting to see if there's a Daenerys-style story where there's something completely tangential on the other side of the
Which there will be,
world.
according to the
I
pitch.
will say he said there are no dragons. There will not be dragons. And the rise of Valyria, you would assume they would get dragons.
I mean, I'm not a history expert. I thought that the whole Valyria Rise thing happens quite a while after this period, or is it kind of tangential?
It happens after the long night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is supposedly what we're being led to believe is that it will take us from the Age of Heroes through the Long Night and after.
Yeah, that's
which
what-
seems weird.
That's what I was asking earlier.
that's a
how do you
really
think
long
they will handle
time,
it?
It's a very long time period.
Because it's like a generation. Like,
what do you
are they
guys
going to
think?
be changing actors or what?
It's chaos up here.
Do you guys have any thoughts on how they're going to handle such a long time
I
period?
have no idea.
Seasons.
I doubt they're going to do a huge 100 years gap. If I had to guess, I would say they're going to do before Long Night, and the end of it will be the end of the show.
It'll be right before because the Long Night lasted a generation, quote unquote. So
They
how
can do
long is
20
that,
years.
really?
According to the unreliable historian.
Yeah, for sure.
But you're right.
Are you calling old man unreliable?
Old man.
So a couple other big differences, I think, is that Essos and Westeros are connected, right, at this time period. They're one. There's no, like, broken arm of Dorne. And so just the idea of them being connected, you can see how there will be more Essosi people, I guess, in there. And I think that is very fascinating to, like, think about, you know, what we're going to see with that.
I mean, sorry.
I'm very curious to see what Westeros and or Essos is like without the formation or the network of all those powerful families and powerful lords and ladies, and just seeing what it's like with a bunch of disparate people sort of all over Pangea, basically. Curious to see that.
Well, disparate kingdoms,
Yeah.
because I guess that's their proto-great families, is these disparate kingdoms. But they did say that Casterly Rock would be there.
Yeah.
With the Casterlys.
Which pretty much means we're going to get a Land the Clever story, right?
For sure.
I feel like they're really setting up for that.
See, what's
Yeah.
interesting is we haven't had anyone cast, I think, that makes us wonder that.
Or
but
have.
we have a pet theory personally, which is that Naomi Watts
Gender
is
bend,
actually
yes.
gender bent, and I
love that.
really hope
I
it's
am
the
into that.
case. No man's land.
I love that because, you know, it's legend, like, you can justify it.
Yes, exactly.
Like, for sure.
Yeah, and she's a dark socialite with, you know, a secret.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Love that character description.
Just like
Dark social.
And you look at her and if you forget
Very
the
nice, yeah.
gender, I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, she winkled them out of Casterly Rock. I think that is. We'll see.
Yeah.
She certainly looks like a
And Alan,
Lannister.
Lannister, yeah.
like, in case someone out there doesn't know, like, the Legend of Land the Clever is that a long time ago, the Casterlys owned Casterly Rock, obviously, and a legendary figure who we don't really know anything about, named Land the Clever, somehow managed to trick them out of it, and then his descendants, the Lannisters, also went on to be great liars and cheats.
Basically.
And it feels like we're going to get that story, definitely. And I really like the Naomi Watts as a gender-bent Land the Clever idea. Because, yeah, socialite. I mean, she'll, you know, get in through marriage, knowing people, saying the right things. I could see that being fun.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. We also will see Old Town, interestingly, potentially. Old Town is actually old, you might guess from the title, but specifically there's the Ravenry of the Citadel is like the stronghold of a pirate lord at that time. And so, like, I'm thinking, like, in terms of places around Westeros where shipping, commerce might happen, where there would be a lot of people. Like, obviously, with the Arm of Dorne, they have to go around, so maybe the Summer Isles are even more important. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about just how different the landscape will make.
Yeah, just from the casting that we've seen,
Yeah.
there are more black people in the pilot of
Yeah.
this show than in the entire of Game of Thrones. So
Yes, actually, there are, from my count, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people of color.
Yeah.
And Naomi Aki is supposed to kind of be a co-lead with Naomi Watts and Denise Go. Naomi, if anybody is not familiar, is going to be in the next Star Wars Rise of Skywalker.
She's also known for the show The Bisexual. And also, but we've also got Ivano Jeremiah, who I love. He's in the show Humans and in Black Mirror, and he's just an incredible actor, but notably he has a lot of experience with combat. So it seems like, you know, he's gonna be fighting a bunch, but you might imagine that we see, you know, he's part of Sheila Atim's, you know, area, and that the Summer, I would guess that maybe they're in the Summer Islands, but maybe all of Dorne connected there.
I think it will be in general more of a worldly show. Yeah.
Yeah. Taking it to further regions, do you guys think we're gonna see like further than like the
It might be
do you think
wishful
we're gonna
thinking.
see that far?
I would really like to see UT, the Great Empire of the Dawn. I would really like to see some old, like, ancient kind of Asian-looking architecture. I think it'd be really great, but I don't know. It might be wishful thinking.
I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Like, I feel like the tagline "Mysteries of the East" sort of implies we might see ET. The Giscari Empire is a good
Yeah.
possibility, I think. because they were definitely around before Valyria rose up. So great, we'll meet Krasnus. So Krasnus, great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, and get to know that asshole.
I'm hoping we'll maybe see the Rhoynar personally, because they're they're pretty
fun, yeah.
close. There's also like the Sarnor, you know, like what is the East exactly? Like how far east are we talking?
We don't even know how far it goes. So
Yeah.
it's like,
This is their chance to
How
show it.
mysterious.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the press release for this says secrets of Westeros will be revealed. So,
Like what's way in the north?
I think that's their way of
always
just
winter.
saying we're not going to tell you anything.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they don't want to tell us anything, but it is a lot of possibilities. And again, I think the fact that there are so many people of color indicates that we are going to go to a lot of new places. Summer Isles, that could work. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, which is it seems ambitious.
If there's one thing that Game of Thrones was able to do that other shows tried, I would say, less successfully, it's uniting a bunch of separate stories into one large story. So I'm hopeful that they're able to do that with it.
I mean, the long night is the perfect excuse because you have something that will affect the entire world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we even have, like, on that far side of Essos, we have this 5 forts, which is
yeah.
supposedly supposed to help keep the Lion of Knights Demons at bay, which, you know, is very similar to the idea of a structure keeping the others out. And so, and that's very close to a shy, to be clear. So I'm wondering if the mysteries of the East ties into all of that.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see like different versions of the, you know, the last hero and Azor Ahai. Like if we'll have like a hero for each culture, or if it comes from the same story. I guess we'll see.
What do you guys think? Do you think we're going to see, like, basically what I think what we saw in Game of Thrones is that they were all, you know, help stop the Long Night. Do you think that's what we're seeing here again?
That's the thing about the long night. In the show, it's like, oh, it's just a Westeros thing. But in the books, it's like it happened all over the world. Like there's legends and myths about it everywhere. So the 5 forts are really interesting too, because, yeah, what were they trying to keep out?
I'm curious, actually, and this is
And it's like a snowy desert, by the way.
This is a good opportunity. Everyone that we know of in the Game of Thrones present has a lot of the myths and legends that they know of, some of which are true and some of which this prequel may have the chance to cover. I wonder what at that time their myths or legends were, because there's always going to be a before. I'm curious to see what comes up.
Yeah, I love that thought.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have to make up a lot of the world building because.
Is there an old Nan character? Is it still old Nan? I don't know how old she is.
The oldest.
That's interesting as you bring up Old Nan, because this makes me think of something we had talked about a little bit behind the stage before we came on. Old Nan mentions that in her telling about this, that this, when the Long Night came, kings were felled and small folk were felled. Everyone alike was just like plowed under. But so are some of these people that we see kings, or some of these socialites, big families, the beginning of big families, are some of these main characters that we'll see out of this many people who've already been cast small folk?
Yeah, I mentioned in a previous panel about the common people precisely that I hope that we get more stories with the small folk about them, not just as servants to higher lords or people being affected by the wars of the high lords, just people surviving the long night, just regular people. I think that this show has an opportunity to focus more on you know, most of the population.
George R.R. Martin, in one interview I read when I was doing research for this, said he would love to have convinced HBO to do a spin-off called Spear Carrier that was just based on all the people around the lords and ladies. And the lords and ladies, you can see them in the background. The stories are about the millers and the salespeople and the fishmongers and.
Yeah, like specifically during Game of Thrones, you'll just like see the back of Cersei's head, you know.
I'm going to turn wig. I think it'd be smart. Although, you know, we're also talking about we want to see more commoners, which I do think is like a weird absence from Game of Thrones, that even the lowborn people are basically become highborn, like Davos. Like he's not, I mean, he's a commoner, but he is raised up such a high mint by the time we get into his point of view. But as Martin said, back in this period, we're not dealing with like 7 kingdoms of thrones. We're dealing with like hundreds of petty little kingdoms.
Yeah.
So even if we do like, if our characters are like kind of the lords, I mean, what does lord mean back then? Really, it's so much.
Lord of what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this pond.
Even a king, it's not like, yeah, we're certainly not going to have like a nexus. We're not going to have like a King's Landing, so yeah, it's going to have to be more varied. Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to, I know Ash, you were mentioning just the hundreds of kingdoms or however many there. I'm curious to see if however many there are when we start the show versus let's say we get 8 seasons then or whatever. How many fewer are there then? Have they come closer to merging?
They've
I don't know.
decided to, like, if it's perhaps it'd be like a mirror image of the end of Game of Thrones, where the Seven Kingdoms split into 6, and it's like it's breaking down. Maybe the end of this show can be all these hundreds of kingdoms united under, I mean, not one ruler, because that's Targaryens thousands of years later, but like
12.
7. Yeah.
Is there like a
Progress.
recorded history of, or at least legend of when they became the
for
Seven
some
Kingdoms?
houses, for some, or when like Harren Hoare, conquered a bunch, and like for some people, like the Starks obviously still ruled like a larger swath of land back then. They existed, but yeah, not for quite a few of them. Like we have tales of like the building of Storm's End, but the exact placement of when that happened, no.
So they can just make it up.
Yeah, that's what's great about this, is
wherever they
because
want.
this is all myth. They really actually have a lot to be flexible with.
Hopefully it won't make like book readers as angry because there's not so many details to get wrong, basically.
Yes.
The details are very sparse in the text. There's a lot of holes to fill in for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly clear the time scale anyway.
Yeah,
Like it
it's
could have,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, just from what we've seen for filming, like we reported on it on Watchers on the Wall. We had photos of, some of the cast in costume, and they look completely different. Like, of course, it makes sense. It's thousands of years ago, but they look kind of Greco-Roman.
Yeah, I think definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I was hoping for. I wanted
too.
to see a very different clothing style. It's a long time ago.
And I think that will be reflected in everything else, not just the clothing.
I mean, yeah, we even see like the logo that they have is the
mammoth.
spear.
Yeah.
They have the mammoth and they have the spear, which are both, emblematic of this low-tech time period.
Stone Agey, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was just wondering if we wanted to address who is actually doing this pilot, who is the showrunner and
yes,
doing
of course.
the
We
script.
haven't mentioned her.
Of course, Jane Goldman is the person who is running it, and well, that's awesome in and of itself because it's a female showrunner, right? So fingers crossed for that, I think. She's known for, Kingsman, X-Men First Class.
Stardust.
Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
She wrote the screenplay for the upcoming Little Mermaid remake.
Oh yeah, she's got a lot going on there.
She's had a lot of projects in the geek world. Yeah.
And she developed actually she got together with George R.R. Martin in New Mexico and developed characters. They were her characters, but she taught to him about everything.
Yeah, and not all of the 5 people, well, there were more than 5 people, but not all of the 5 projects were, developed in collaboration with Martin. So it's good that he had some involvement.
My guess is his involvement will be as fairly limited as it was. Like to see, like he wrote 1 episode per season up to 4.
Yeah.
And he did in 5 to 8. So my guess is he will be involved in seasons 5 to 8 capacity.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree with you.
We'll see.
I just mean that it's nice that he was there at the inception of the idea, at least.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, she is, she's not an unknown quantity because she has done movies. I don't think we know what she can do as a showrunner. But I mean, I do like that, again, I like that they didn't go with, J.J. Abrams or like a big name or something. Like they are giving it to someone who hopefully just had the best idea, that it wasn't about like giving it to somebody who, came with a pedigree. And I feel the same way with most of the actors. I mean, most of them are not unknowns, but they are, not giant names. And Naomi Watts and
Miranda Richardson.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both names, but they're kind of actors first, who became noted because of how good they are. I think so. Just from what we know, we don't know a lot. The casting choices seem very good, and the show running choices seem like cause to be interested. Also, the director, S.J. Clarkson, for the pilot.
How much? I want to go down the line. How much are you guys? How much were you guys excited about this topic? Were you like, really? Were you excited? Let's hear from all of you.
At first, like when we heard about the prequel, I wasn't excited at all, but it makes sense. Like we knew absolutely nothing. Okay. But the more that we know, the more excited I'm getting. Like it wouldn't have been my first choice of story. Okay. I think a lot more. Most people were like saying maybe the fall of Valyria or something like that.
Yeah.
Not being a major historian of the novels myself, I didn't have any expectations, and I am very excited. I was very excited when it came out because it sounds. I like the political intrigue, and so 100-something kingdoms, and how are they going to unify, or how is someone going to take control, and that sounds interesting to me. So yeah.
I'm excited, of course. I am a little wary. My concern, which can't be borne out because we don't know anything, is that does it sound a little like it could be too similar to Game of Thrones?
Yes.
That's what I feel too.
There's White Walkers coming down again, Army of the Dead, and again, it could be very different. They could do it totally differently. But that does give me a little bit of pause.
Yeah, I would say I'm excited, but I have some reservations. It could be too similar, but I also do want to know why the White Walkers literally do anything. So it's like, I'll watch it just to know.
Yeah, I like this idea. Like Luca said, the more I find out about it, the more interested I become. Just the concept of a prequel, it's like, well, I don't know. But like you said about the 100 Kingdoms, that's very interesting. And the fact that they've already put together a cast that looks really very competent. They're all British theater actors, of course.
Of course they are.
Of course they are. But
Ash, I think it was you.
And they're somewhat different than the Game of Thrones, concept people. I mean,
I like that we do still have some children, because I think that's one of the things that people liked about Game of Thrones is
not as many, which I think was a choice, because now that they don't have a story to base it on, like they don't half of the cast are children, which I think they will be grateful for.
Yeah, I remember, Ash, I think it was you. You said at some point we were talking the other day, and I remember you said it would be interesting that no one has any allegiance to anything. Was that you?
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. So I think that. Dan, to your point, I think that might make it different than Game of Thrones, because if no one has any allegiance to any sworn lord, you have like anarchy to it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely going to be different. I mean, HBO's smart enough to know that they can't just do the same thing. Like lightning doesn't strike twice. That's the same. And it's not going to here. They got to change it up. I just hope they change it up enough. I don't want it to feel,
like watching the same show.
like a retread.
Yes.
I feel
And
like
I have hope that they know what they're doing and they won't do that.
Yeah, I had reservations for sure. I still do. One of the things that made me feel better was that one line I keep coming back to, the mysteries of the East, because that really makes it seem like there will be some freshness there that's
totally
very different.
Very different.
In particular, one of the things from the history books that intrigues me is that, because again, the pitch talks about the descent from the Age of Heroes, right, into the Long Night. Well, we have one particular tale about how the Long Night started, which is essentially, there's this thing known as the Great Empire of the Dawn over in Essos. One of, the last monarchs of it was known as the Amethyst Empress, and she is cast down by the Bloodstone Emperor and betrayed, and it's known as the Blood Betrayal, and they say that that's what caused the Long Night. So I'm curious if we're going to see in the East that they're causing this to happen. I'm wondering what the mysteries of the East entails.
What's curious about that?
Was that in GT or?
Was that in?
Sorry, the pronunciation. The empire based on China.
No, it is not.
Okay.
I was just going to say, what's curious about that whole Yeti thing is it says in the text, I believe, that when the Bloodstone Emperor killed his own sister and took her throne and usurped her, that the Lion of Night that the Maiden of Light turned her back in the world, and the Lion of Night was able to move forth. And it's funny that we brought up the Five Forts, because they're specifically said to be brought up to keep the Lion of Night's demons out of the world. So I don't know. That seems like a hint that maybe the White Walkers were in the East somehow, perhaps.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about the idea, right, that Jane Goldman and the other, writers took their ideas oftentimes from Fire and Blood or The World of Ice and Fire. George specifically said that some of the pitches were based on just like a paragraph or a sentence, right, like a chunk.
Included, yeah.
And so, like, she's been doing her research here and is going to be taking all of these things into account.
Jane Goldman's really great. I brought up Stardust, and that's just a really great fantasy movie. Like, she's like personifying all these like kind of ideas, which is just really great.
I was going to say that going back to that original press release, it talks about Blood Moon. It says we will find out the true origin of the White Walkers, which kind of ties into what you're saying, and to what you're saying is that no, it's not necessarily what you think that led to this situation.
If they do it well, I think that maybe it will make people less retroactively angry about how the original show handled it. Like giving it.
That's why they greenlit it.
Maybe
They made the
but
pilot.
maybe they didn't give so much historical context to the White Walkers. Maybe there wasn't any big revelation in season 8 because they knew that maybe there was going to be another show. So I don't know.
I doubt it.
So I think another cool thing, like, so you guys mentioned the mammoth. Obviously, there's like the mammoth, logo. George specifically mentioned mammoths there, but there's a few other animals that we could see here. Direwolves, right? I'm excited to see maybe some great lions over there.
Before they were hunted, right?
Yes,
For
exactly.
extinction. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways. No one else has any thoughts? No one else wants ice spiders as big as hounds, I
Well,
guess?
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
I've
I
established
do.
I want ice spiders.
I just wanted to take time to get there and be used sparingly. is all I'm saying.
Season 3 finale, ice spider big as hounds.
It should be in the first episode.
I wonder if they will respond to the reaction to the lack of direwolves in Game of Thrones with, an overabundance of.
Yeah, I mean they weren't extinct. They would be
Yeah, for
roaming.
sure. In actual Westeros instead of north of the wall. So of course, maybe they have them as pets as well. I don't know. We will see.
Would anybody want to hear a crackpot theory I have about the title, the Children of the Forest, and the moon?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. All right.
It's really long.
I'm sorry.
I think it's really long, though.
What is
Did
it?
you say for a title?
Oh no. I have a theory what's going to happen. Okay. Blood Moon. That's the working title. Not for sure. Although they did make a logo for it. So I feel like we're getting kind of close to confirmation, although, it could still change.
They do that for a lot of things.
I suppose. It's like an elaborate logo. It's got a spear and a reflection. Anyway, we're talking about the moon. Early in Game of Thrones, Daenerys is told a legend about how there used to be 2 moons, and one cracked open, one got too close to the sun, and dragons poured out. And in this logo, in Blood Moon, it's like blood and then moon. They got 2 O's are kind of made into moons. And I'm thinking, do we have 2 moons back here? Is one of them going to fall? Is one of them going to be destroyed? Is it going to be good?
That'd be amazing.
That's a good crackpot theory.
Maybe the children, and here's where the crackpot comes in. It hasn't even happened yet. Maybe the Children of the Forest destroy one of the moons, and that's how they destroy the Arm of Dorne, and that'll be the season 2 finale.
No, I do.
And also dragons.
Yeah, speaking to that, I think that would be a fun topic, actually, is like trying to think about where we think like big season ending things might be. And I think that's a great call. Like breaking the Arm of Dorne, that's going to be a really big moment in the show.
What I'm not sure about is how long the show is going to be. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they will have it planned from the beginning, like they almost did with the original show. I don't know.
Anyone down there have any thoughts on like some big moments you might expect to see, want to see?
It's so weird and muddy, right? Because the Arm of Dorne was supposedly broken in the war between the Children of the Forest and men before the Age of Heroes, right? So it's like I don't know, but like I said, the time scales are muddy and weird, so
Yeah, they really
don't
get to
really
be
know
very
when
flexible.
stuff actually
Yeah.
happened.
Which is very smart, by the way,
Yeah.
that they chose this period. Because, I mean, if there's an inconsistency, it's so easily explained away by, well, everything you read is written by a maester who didn't have all the information, or old Nan, who, what are you going to trust her? She's just
So it's just going to have well actually all over it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
everything here is 5,000 to 10,000
Yeah,
years in
I
the
mean,
past.
if they had done the Dance of Dragons,
Yeah.
like inconsistencies would be very obvious.
Yes.
What I'm excited about, for the first time all over again, I'm very excited for a character called Bran. Because Bran the Builder, as far as I understand it, is part of the Age of Heroes and the Wall, and why that's
like
like
a
built.
natural fit.
So I'm sure if he isn't one of these, you have them written down here, if he isn't one of those cast members already, I'm sure he'll be in it at some point.
Josh Whitehouse as
that your
Bran the
thought?
Builder.
Well, Bran the Builder could be a really interesting season end.
Yeah.
The idea of him coming in and doing his thing and building the wall.
Yeah,
What if it was
I think
actually
I would
Bran
agree
from
with
Game of
that,
Thrones?
that maybe they
Yeah, if
lead
you
us
go back
into
to that
that,
theory.
but also
Camera,
I
like,
kind of
pans
feel
over
like
to,
they
like,
would
a local
start
builder.
us with the Starks, because they know everyone loves the Starks.
Well, it could be like camera pans over to like a small a builder, someone's putting a brick in something. Oh, what's your name? Hi. Turns around, hi, I'm Bran. Season 1, and
He's building Winterfell right then.
Except for the prologue, we started the books with a Bran, right?
Yeah,
So maybe they will want to do the same.
yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I like that.
I hope they keep like moments like that to a minimum. Like I feel like that's like a prequel trap. Like so.
No, I agree.
No, it
that
rhymes
Star
and all
Wars
that.
movie.
The old Star
God.
Wars.
Like that are things like here's how he got his blaster. Here's how he got his jacket. And it's like who cares?
how he got his name.
Like that's not a plot development. Like that's not a story. Like I don't want them to fall in the trap of like seeing the origin of incidental things and calling it plot development. I want them to actually like tell the story.
I agree. Yeah. Since there's no actual characters, like if they do that, it's going to be with as we said, with Casterly Rock or something like that. It's going to be like places and major events. So I'm not that worried about it.
even that would be just a surprise reveal of his name. You know he exists.
Yeah, that's fine.
Development.
As long as it's not like the way they end season 1. Like,
No, we were
you
just
gotta do
talking-
better.
I think he'll be in the beginning of season. Honestly, I think he will be a main character.
Yeah, I probably agree. Land the Clever, Bran the Builder seem
Yeah.
like obvious places to go.
Yeah.
Everyone has a "the" after their name.
I'm wondering what their names would actually be, because they couldn't be Bran or Lan, would they? Because that's just like the name that legends have given them, right?
Well, I mean, in the Starks case, I guess Bran is just a family
Yeah, it
name,
is.
maybe
It's a
like passed
family
down
name.
for
That's
forever.
where there's like speculation that maybe it was actually multiple people, because these castles are in some cases like maybe built hundreds of years
Yeah.
apart.
Right.
So
Yeah, with that. I mean, like.
And that's
I mean-
true in a lot of history. Figures get mashed up together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is why it is so clever to place this in this time period, because nobody really knows, and it's already been pre-set up in George R. R. Martin's world that this is partially legend, partially myth, and maybe nobody really remembers what the true story is.
Right.
And the idea is, we're going to come out and tell you what really happened.
So we're almost done with our time, but I want to ask you guys a question and start wrapping it up. I want to start with you, Lisa.
Yes.
If you had to name one or two, spin-off, whether they're prequel or sequel ideas, what do you want most? I know I'm putting you on the spot right
Yeah, you
here.
are.
I am. We can move past you if you want. I just wanted to pay attention to that side of the table. It's so hard for me to see
It's
that.
okay. Thank you very much. I think I would like to see the Age of the Dragons, actually, with the Valerians.
Okay. Do you want to see the Doom? Or do you want to see just them in their power?
In their power.
In their power.
Yeah, I would like to see that, but that's possibly one of the sequel ideas that's being tossed about, something in Fire and Blood.
Quinn?
I would love to see a show about the Dornish people. I'd love to see them in battle, and I feel like it would just be really great to get some cool Dorne stuff going on.
Yeah.
Not like the way they did it in Game of Thrones.
I still think they should have gone with an hour-long drama prequel and then a half-hour comedy about hot pie at the inn at the crossroads, having cheers-like misadventures, just like really low stakes, just kind of chill and make it an hour-and-a-half programming block. Sorry, HBO didn't go for it. Should have.
I would probably be interested most in the Targaryen Conquest.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I heard a theory before we knew what they were going to do, and maybe it would have been nice to have like, each season is a different story. Like just.
Yeah, I love that idea
Yeah.
of like an anthology.
Anthology, yeah.
Yes, an
Yeah.
anthology season. I would really like that a
So
lot.
then you can have like smaller but more varied stories.
For myself personally, I actually also have a comedy one that I want. As one of them, my number one choice is Nymeria. Obviously the Rhoynar migration. I did that for the Great Debates last year and won. So apparently some people agree. But I just think it's a great tale. Again, it speaks to Quinn's idea of seeing Dorne and seeing the world, seeing Essos, because you see them travel all over the place, which I would love to see. But of course, it does have the issue of spanning a long period of time. So that's my pick. But I also really want to see like a mockumentary in the world, just like that style. I'm crazy about them, so that's my dream. And I also want to speak to, I know you guys are familiar with this, especially because I'm sure you guys get people asking you about it all the time, the things that people want, which are things like the Dance of the Dragons and Dunk and Egg and
Robert's Rebellion, yeah.
Yeah. You guys want to, any of you guys want to speak to that and why we're not having that?
Yeah, I think Robert's Rebellion in particular is not a good idea for the same reason that George Martin said that he wouldn't actually write it out in a story, because by the end of it we know most of it, so it would fall on that prequel trap of telling the story that you already know.
Yeah, that would fall into like the Star Wars prequel trap.
Yeah.
I think Robert's Rebellion also because just I want something with characters we don't know. I want something with characters we don't have, and Robert's Rebellion is half the old characters is younger.
I think a Dunk and Egg television show would be kind of lackluster after Game of Thrones, to be honest. I mean,
I would like an animated series, maybe.
an animated series would be a lot better.
That sounds
Yeah.
great.
I would like Dunk and Egg. I mean, like, as long as they don't treat it as like an epic. If it's like a
Yeah.
smaller
Yeah.
scale.
Be a difference in
wouldn't
tone.
mind that, though. I don't think it would lack luster. I just think it would lack spectacle.
Yeah.
I think they may have
fun. I
fallen
wonder how
into the
successful
Hobbit
it'd be, though.
trap
I don't
of
know.
taking a story that's smaller and having to make it much larger because
Oh, yeah, exactly.
the story that we know was larger. Like they tried to make the Hobbit like the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, and it was the worst thing in
Yeah,
the world.
that's why I'm saying that.
200-page children's book became a 9-hour movie.
But again, like HBO is smarter than Warner Brothers, I hope. And like I think as long as they, like I feel like Blood Moon is their attempt to do another Game of Thrones size show, and that's fine. I hope it's a success. And it's ambitious and it's great and it's wonderful. I would be totally open to just shows that don't have that scale though, that you can work with different tones in this universe. We'll see if they end up doing that down the line.
I feel that way about a few other like cinematic universes, which is what Game of Thrones is maybe like creating here as their TV universe, where I want them to not just be like this action comedy, thing. I want them just to have a straight drama, like I'm talking about like Marvel or even Star Wars. Like I just want to see something that isn't the same kind of format, and so I would love that for Game of Thrones, but just like those other things, I think we're, a good decade, 2 decades from actually getting to that point.
The GCU.
It just takes a network smart enough and brave enough to like take a plunge and do it. And I just hope HBO becomes that network.
All right, I think we got to wrap it up, everyone. But thank you all for coming out. I wish we could keep going. There's so much to talk about here.
Yeah, it's a lot.